Can you not even pour water, you stupid girl?" The words, sharp and cold as a winter blade, cut through the opulent hum of the Cheyenne Grand Hotel's private saloon. They were spoken by a man accustomed to being obeyed, a man who saw the world as a collection of assets and obstacles, and the young woman who had just refilled his glass was, to him, less than an obstacle. She was furniture that moved. But what you must understand, and what he would soon learn in the most catastrophic way imaginable, is that character is a currency that is always in circulation, and its value is only truly revealed in moments like these. This story is a testament to that truth, a cautionary tale forged in the gilded heart of the New West, where fortunes were built on iron rails and cattle drives, but empires were lost on the weakness of a single, arrogant word. We are about to witness the spectacular collapse of a titan, not from a bad investment or a market crash, but from a fatal deficit of decency. If you have ever been underestimated, ignored, or dismissed, then listen closely, because the quiet waitress at the center of this storm is about to demonstrate that the most profound power is the power that goes unseen, the strength that is held in reserve, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. The man who spoke those words was Sterling Blackwood, and he was about to lose a $3.5 billion deal in today's money, and he had absolutely no one to blame but himself and the poison in his own soul. The deal on the table was a thing of legend, a partnership that would merge Sterling Blackwood's sprawling cattle empire with Marcus Thorne's unstoppable railroad network, creating a monopoly that would dominate the entire Western Territory for a generation. Marcus Thorne was an older, almost spectral figure, a man of immense wealth who operated with the quiet patience of a glacier, carving his path through the world with unstoppable, silent force. He was a man who listened more than he spoke, his eyes missing nothing. And for the past 2 hours, he had been listening to Sterling Blackwood boast, posture, and dominate the conversation. But the real subject of Marcus Thorne's observation was not the man's business acumen, which was undeniable. It was his character. Thorne believed that a man's true nature was not revealed when he was facing a peer, but when he was addressing someone he perceived as being beneath him. And so, he watched. He watched as Sterling dismissed the waitress with a flick of his wrist. He watched as the Titan failed to make eye contact, failed to offer a single word of thanks. He watched as Sterling treated the young woman, Cora, as an extension of the table itself. And Cora, for her part, performed her duties with a quiet, unshakable grace. She moved with a silent dignity that seemed utterly out of place, a small, steady flame of composure in the presence of a raging bonfire of ego. She was the test. Every glass she filled, every plate she cleared, was a question being asked of Sterling Blackwood, and with every dismissive gesture, he was failing spectacularly. The tension in the room was a palpable thing, thick as molasses. Blackwood, accustomed to quick decisions and immediate gratification, was growing visibly agitated by Thorne's deliberate, contemplative silence. He needed this deal, not just for the money, but for the prestige, for the final, crowning achievement of his dominion. His frustration, seeking an outlet, began to curdle into casual cruelty. At one point, gesturing emphatically to make a point about his logistical superiority, he knocked his half-full whiskey glass, sending a wave of amber liquid across the pristine linen tablecloth. He glared at the spreading stain as if it were a personal affront, and then his eyes snapped to Cora, who was already moving forward with a fresh cloth. "Clumsy," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, a clear implication that she was somehow at fault for his own carelessness. Cora said nothing. Her expression remained serene, her hand steady as she cleaned up the mess. She did not defend herself, did not offer an excuse. She simply absorbed his ugliness and erased its evidence, her calmness a stark, infuriating contrast to his simmering rage. Marcus Thorne watched this exchange, his fingers steepled under his chin, his gaze unwavering. He was observing the foundation of the man with whom he was considering building an empire, and he was seeing cracks. He was seeing a man who deflected blame, who vented his frustrations on the powerless, who believed his status was a shield that made him immune to the basic requirements of human decency. The whiskey stain was a small thing, but it revealed a rot that ran deep. The final, fatal moment came from a place of pure, unadulterated hubris. The negotiations had stalled on a minor point, a matter of territorial rights that Thorne was refusing to concede without further study. For Blackwood, this was an insult. He felt his authority being questioned, his power being checked. He needed to reassert his dominance, to demonstrate his own importance in a way that Thorn could not ignore. He needed a prop for his performance of outrage. His eyes fell on Cora as she approached to refill his water glass for the final time. In a gesture of calculated contempt, he waited until the pitcher was tilted and then jolted his glass, causing water to splash onto the table. It was then that he unleashed the words, the two words that would seal his fate, aimed at her but intended for Thorn. "Can you not even pour water, you stupid girl?" The room fell into a profound silence. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner sounded like hammer blows. The insult hung in the air, naked and vile. It was more than an insult, it was a declaration of his own character. In that moment, he told Marcus Thorn everything he needed to know. He revealed that he was a man who would punch down, a man who saw kindness as weakness, a man whose ego was so fragile that he had to break others to feel whole. He had intended to show his power, but instead, he had revealed a fatal, pathetic weakness. He had laid his soul bare, and it was a barren, ugly thing. For the first time in over 2 hours, Marcus Thorn leaned forward, his eyes locking not with Sterling Blackwood, but with the waitress. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable for Blackwood, who was now beginning to feel a prickle of unease. He had expected Thorn to perhaps chuckle, to dismiss the girl and get back to business. He did not expect the weight of the old man's complete, undivided attention to be placed on the woman he had just debased. Then, Thorn spoke, his voice quiet but resonating with an authority that dwarfed Blackwood's boisterous bluster. "Cornelia Thorn," he said, the name dropping into the silence like a stone into a deep well. Blackwood's jaw went slack. His mind scrambled to connect the name, the face, the impossible reality coalescing before him. Thorn continued, his gaze never leaving the young woman's face. "Daughter," he said, the word a death blow to Sterling Blackwood's world. "You have been observing this man for 3 days now, from the moment he stepped off the train. You have listened to his conversations, you have watched how he treats the staff, and you have stood here in silence while he has revealed his true nature. What is your assessment?" The power in the room had shifted so completely, so seismically, that the foundations of Sterling Blackwood's reality were vaporized. The waitress, the invisible girl, that stupid piece of furniture, was not a pawn. She was the queen, and she had been watching the board the entire time. Cora, now revealed as Cornelia Thorn, straightened to her full height. The demure posture of a servant fell away, replaced by an aura of quiet, formidable confidence. She turned her steady, intelligent gaze upon Sterling Blackwood, who looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. His face, moments before a mask of arrogant contempt, was now a pathetic canvas of shock, disbelief, and dawning, gut-wrenching horror. When she spoke, her voice was as calm and clear as it had been when she'd asked if he wanted more water. It was devoid of anger or malice, it was the voice of a final, impartial judgment. "My assessment, father," she began, "is that Mr. Blackwood's empire is built on a foundation of sand. He mistakes cruelty for strength and volume for value. A man who cannot show basic respect to a person he believes holds no power over him cannot be trusted to honor a contract with a person who does. He is impatient, unstable, and his character is a liability that no amount of profit could ever justify." Each word was a nail in the coffin of the $3.5 billion deal. She then turned her eyes back to her father. "We cannot build with a man like this. He would be a cancer in our enterprise." Marcus Thorn listened, nodded once, a gesture of absolute finality, and then looked at the ghost-white face of Sterling Blackwood. "The deal is off, Mr. Blackwood," he said calmly. "And I would advise you to be on the first train out of this city. Your reputation, I fear, will precede you." The fallout was not slow. It was an avalanche. News in the tight-knit world of frontier tycoons traveled faster than a telegraph wire. Before Sterling Blackwood had even checked out of his suite, the story was already being told in hushed, shocked tones in every bank, saloon, and brokerage house from Cheyenne to San Francisco. It wasn't just the story of a lost deal, it was the story of why it was lost. It was the parable of the Titan and the waitress. Marcus Thorn did not have to lift a finger to destroy Blackwood. He simply allowed the truth of the man's character to be exposed, and the world did the rest. Business partners who had long tolerated Blackwood's arrogance, seeing it as a byproduct of his success, now saw it for what it was, a critical weakness, a sign of profound instability. If he could implode over a glass of water, what would he do in a real crisis? Bankers who had extended him massive lines of credit suddenly grew nervous. Contracts that were pending were quietly withdrawn. His rivals, smelling blood in the water, began to circle. His empire, which had seemed so invincible just that morning, began to crumble under the weight of his own revealed character. He had spent a lifetime building a fortress of wealth and power, but he had neglected the foundation. And a single, quiet woman had walked up and shown the world that the entire, magnificent structure was hollow, and a gentle push was all it took to bring it down. As Sterling Blackwood's world unraveled, Cornelia and Marcus Thorne sat in their private train car, watching the planes roll by. There was no celebration, no gloating. There was only a quiet sense of confirmation, of a necessary and just outcome. This had been Cornelia's final test, the culmination of years of her father's tutelage. He had not raised her to be a sheltered princess, he had raised her to be a queen, a leader who understood that the true measure of a person is not found in their balance sheets, but in their soul. He had taught her that anyone can perform decency when they are being watched by their equals, but true integrity is how you behave when you think no one of consequence is looking. That is why she had spent a month working in their own hotels, in their own rail cars, serving their own business partners. She was learning to see past the polished veneers and into the hearts of men. She was not a victim of Blackwood's insult, she was the arbiter of his fate. Her quiet dignity was not a sign of weakness, but of immense, controlled strength. She had endured his contempt without flinching because she knew her own worth, and his pathetic display of ego had no power to diminish it. She was the hidden royalty, the undercover observer, and her judgment, when it came, was absolute. 1 year later, the landscape of the West had been reshaped. Sterling Blackwood was a ghost, his name a byword for hubris. He had lost everything, his ranches, his contracts, his reputation. He was a broken man, seen occasionally in dusty, forgotten towns, a living monument to the fact that no amount of money can purchase a person's character. His fall was a cautionary tale told to young, ambitious men across the country. Meanwhile, Cornelia Thorne was no longer in the shadows. She was a known and respected force in her father's empire, his chosen heir and most trusted advisor. She managed the vast network of logistics and partnerships with a wisdom and fairness that earned her unwavering loyalty. She was known for her quiet strength, her keen insight, and above all, her profound integrity. She often visited the workers on the rail lines and in the hotels, not as an observer, but as a leader who knew their names, who listened to their concerns, and who treated every single person, from the lowest paid porter to the wealthiest passenger, with the same unshakable, dignified respect. She was building an empire that was even stronger than her father's, because it was founded not just on steel and gold, but on the bedrock of human decency, a foundation that could never be shaken by the arrogance of a single, foolish man. So, what is the lesson in this? It is as simple as it is profound. The way you treat people is your truest signature. It is the loudest proclamation of who you are. Arrogance is a disease of the insecure, a desperate attempt to project a power that one does not truly possess. Real strength, the kind of strength that builds legacies, is quiet, it is respectful, it is humble. It is the strength of Cornelia Thorne, who knew that her value was not determined by the uniform she wore or the judgment of a fool. It is the wisdom of Marcus Thorne, who knew that the best investment you can ever make is in people of character. Think about your own life, about the interactions you have every single day. The person who serves you coffee, the janitor who cleans your office, the stranger you pass on the street. How do you treat them? Do you see them? Do you acknowledge their humanity? Because you never know who you are talking to. More importantly, every interaction is a reflection of your own soul. Build your life, your career, your relationships on a foundation of respect. Let your character be your currency. Because as Sterling Blackwood learned in one catastrophic, life-altering afternoon, it is the only currency that truly matters, and a deficit there can cost you everything.